Happy May the 4th. As a kid of the 2000s, I enjoyed the Star Wars prequels. The Phantom Menace was my introduction to the Star Wars universe. However, it wasn't until I discovered the internet that I realized the hatred towards the prequels. This was quite a shock to me. I admit the prequels have some flaws, and there are things I don't like about the prequels, and understand that everyone has different takes, but people acted like they were the worst things ever made, and at times would be downright hateful and ignored those who liked them. Why do I bring this up? Well, it leads to the topic of today's review, the people versus George Lucas. I originally wasn't going to review this film as I feared I would make it personal, which is something I decided I wouldn't resort to when tearing apart movies I dislike. But after some consideration, I decided I could review this without making it personal. Plus, this film needs to be called out more because certain jerks like to spin the narrative that the fandom always loved George Lucas in the prequels. Well, they used to, but you get the point. Anyway, let's dive in. The People vs. George Lucas is a documentary comedy film directed by Alexandra O'Phillippe and released on March 14, 2010, distributed by Wrekin' Hill Entertainment. Despite the film's title, director Alexandria Philippe has claimed that the film is not meant to be one-sided against Lucas, but rather explore what extent the Star Wars franchise is controlled by Lucas versus something held morally by the public. I seriously question this claim, as 99% of this film comes off as an OT purist bitch fest. Like, even if I did hate the prequels, I'd still hate this film and have to stop myself from dying from the cringe. I mean, just listen to this.
He's almost like a Holocaust denier, but he's a Star Wars denier. It's like, this never existed. Don't worry about that.
It's like abuse victims returning to this site of their abuse in order to conquer it somehow.
The changes are dramatic. I'm trying to think of something where the changes are dramatic that might have caused some debate. Oh yeah, the Bible. I'd say like Battered Wife is probably a better example. We keep getting beaten by bad dad, but keep going back to bad dad to get beaten some more.
Side note, that last one is from Chris Gore, who is a regular on Fandom Menace streams, and has said some rather bigoted things in his own videos. This film brings nothing new or informative, and only repeats all prequel-hating and special edition talking points. Han shot first, Jar Jar Binks is annoying, midichlorians are stupid, despite Lucas planning their inclusion from drafts before A New Hope, and Darth Vader screaming no. But the biggest problem with this film is that it's very biased against Lucas, which even Mark Hamill called out.
I almost got hornswoggled in that documentary where they weren't calling it The People versus George Lucas at the time, but I could tell from the questions they were asking me, it was an open invitation to trash George.
Of course, what would you expect? This film features Hot Waffles, the guys behind the song George Lucas Raped Our Childhood. The film also further perpetuates the stigma that George Lucas only made the prequels for the money. Yeah, because Lucas is so greedy he gave the money he got from selling Star Wars to charity. The movie also glosses over the fact that if it weren't for Lucas, things like digital cinematography, Industrial Light and Magic, THX, Pixar, and so on wouldn't exist if it weren't for him. But no, because Lucas made changes to the original trilogy and directed the prequels, he is the Antichrist. Furthermore, as the creator of Star Wars, it is Lucas's right to change the original trilogy. I mean, it's not uncommon for authors of best-selling books to release new editions with modifications, and many of the changes were justified, such as better-looking lightsabers, the improved Cloud City, and the Emperor. Before I give my overall thoughts on the movie, I thought I'd do something this movie couldn't do: properly criticize George Lucas. As much as I've been inspired by George Lucas and respect what he's contributed, I don't think Lucas is exempt from criticism. There are plenty of things I don't see eye to eye with him on, much like many other influential creators whose work I enjoy. Like, I was genuinely disappointed in Lucas when I learned he wanted to sexualize a 14-year-old Ahsoka even more in the Clone Wars and make her younger than she already was. I do think George Lucas has a bit of an ego. Granted, it is not as extreme as that of Butch Hartman or Thomas Astruc, but still. And sure, George Lucas surrounded himself with too many yes men when directing the prequels, and there could have been more pushback. Also, I don't approve of his decision to keep the unaltered original trilogy inaccessible. I mean, there could have been the option of which version people wanted to watch on the DVD release. Oh, and some of the changes to the original trilogy were unnecessary and at times distracting. Back to this film. I can say without a doubt, The People vs. George Lucas is the worst movie I have ever seen. It's worth noting that I saw this the same year I saw Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas, LaQuisha, and Morbius. This film represents everything wrong with the Star Wars fandom, geek culture, and humanity. The film also completely falls flat as a documentary. The whole point of one is to enlighten the viewer. What does this film offer?
Nothing.
On my rating scale, I'm going to give The People vs. George Lucas half a star. So that's my review of The People vs. George Lucas. Let me say, making this video was very therapeutic. As a fan of the prequels, I hated how certain YouTube circles would trash them, disregarding prequel fans and refusing to take account for putting Star Wars and the fandom where it is now. I also hated that the fandom menace pretend to be fans of the prequels and George Lucas, despite being the same people who drove him to sell the rights. I've said everything I wanted to say. What are your thoughts? Please share in the comments.